Recently, a new wave of difficulty has started, with a bunch of levels that are estimated to be top 5 difficulty at the brink of getting verified. We got very good progress on Grief, Silent Necropolis, Sweeping Demon 2, Vehemence, the list just goes on and on. This leads me to the thought, is there a human limit to how far difficulty can go? And the answer is yes, there is, but not in the way you think. But before I explain why I think so, we first need to clarify the question of what is difficulty. Well, obviously difficulty is how hard a level is, you might say, and it is usually easy to figure out the relative difficulty of two levels by comparing them to each other based on opinions of people who have beaten them. Most lists, like Point of Crate and the all-rated Extreme Demons list, are made by compiling these opinions until you get a list of levels based on their relative difficulty to other levels. This system works fine until you reach the very pinnacle of top play, where only 2 of 3 players are skilled enough at the game to give a valid difficulty opinion. This can cause issues, like the TS2 vs Amethyst drama, or Silent Clubstep seeming to never move down the list. However, it all gets even worse when nobody is skilled enough to give a valid opinion on the difficulty of a level. In these cases, the community must resort to either counting frame windows, which have been proven to not be an accurate representation of difficulty, or just straight up guessing to try and estimate how hard a level is. For the sake of argument though, let's imagine that the impossible levels list is perfectly accurate, and the human limit is the hardest level that can be beaten by any person in the community, even if that level doesn't sit on top of the Point of Crate demon list. So, without further ado, let's get into the arguments. A good argument for the existence of a human limit goes as follows. Since there are levels that are humanly possible, like Retray, and levels that are 100% humanly impossible, like Tax Evasion, and no levels that are both humanly possible and impossible at the same time, there must be a boundary between the hardest possible level and the easiest impossible level. This boundary would then be the human limit. However, would this line appear as a line on the theoretically perfect impossible levels list, which separates the possible from the impossible? No. Let's say, for example, that Eternus is the hardest possible level to be cleared by humans. If it is the hardest possible level, then no harder level than Eternus can be verified. However, imagine a level that is an exact copy of Eternus, but with one tiny one-spike jump at the end. It would be foolish to say that this new version of Eternus is impossible, as the single spike jump at the end would be completely free to the verifier of Eternus and would not stop them from beating the level. Yet, the single spike jump clearly does add some difficulty, even if it be a minuscule amount, as it requires an extra input, and it is possible to die to it. The reverse is also possible. Let's say that Rare is considered humanly impossible. Is it still impossible if the last 25% of the level is removed? If not, what if the last half of the level is removed? According to this argument, there would be a point where enough difficulty is removed and Rare would be humanly impossible. But where would that be? This is a variation of the Sorites paradox, which poses the question of how many grains of sand form a heap, or in this case, how much difficulty do you need to remove for the level to be possible? Well, what if instead of a line placed on the impossible levels list, the human limit was just a level of difficulty we could never achieve, but we could come infinitely close to? Kind of like an asymptote. If it was graphed, it would look like this, where the x-axis is time and the y-axis is difficulty. This way, levels like Rare and Tax Evasion would be placed up here above the line, since people will never beat them legitimately. And levels like Deadlocked and Change of Scene will be here below the line. So, what will the graph of the hardest level over time look like? I think it will look a little bit like this. It looks a little bit like a logarithmic curve, with the hardest level getting closer and closer over time to the human limit, but never reaching it, as we start to max out our biology and our pure physical ability to click with precision. Sure, there will be different ways to increase the difficulty beyond frame windows, such as memory, awkward click patterns, and 2-player, but eventually even those will be mastered, and the difficulty explosion will slow down. So, this level over here could be Bloodbath, this could be Tartarus, and maybe this level is Society. This is a very convenient way to think about there being a human limit, as it fits well with both the idea of there needing to be a human limit since there are impossible levels and possible levels, and it also sidesteps the Sorites paradox completely, as there is always a small gap between the current human skill level and the theoretical human limit. However, notice how I'm saying theoretical. It is a recognized fact by now that nothing in this universe is forever. Someday we will all die, and so will Geometry Dash and its community. It could take 20, 10, maybe 50 years, but eventually the game will become irrelevant. So, when Geometry Dash does inevitably die, and the younger generation isn't interested in it anymore and moves on to other things that are more popular at the time, there won't be an incentive to grind millions of attempts on a level when it won't even get that much recognition or fame. So, what I'm saying is that there will come a time when we get our last ever top 1. One that will never get dethroned. No matter how long it takes for that to happen, it will happen eventually. That level, the last top 1, will be the true human limit. So, to wrap it all up, is there a skill limit in theory? Kind of. Is there a hardest level that we as a community will ever beat? Yes. I think with that said, it isn't unreasonable to say that yes, there is a human limit, and don't let that discourage you from beating harder and harder levels. And hell, maybe you'll be the one to verify the final top 1. Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, you should like and subscribe, and maybe leave your thoughts in the comments. Maybe I am completely wrong about everything I said, I don't know. Okay, bye guys.